Thank you to the worship team. You can't tell necessarily if you're just showing up, but it has been a bit of a tough morning technically around here, and they're pouring so much into it. And I was having a conversation yesterday over email with someone who's new in our community, and just talking about the diversity of this church, and not just the stuff you can see. We can look around and see that we don't all look the same, we all have the same lifestyle, same life, what's the word I'm looking for, stage. But there's also a diversity of background, there's a diversity of persuasion, and it's reflected even in the way that we conduct ourselves in worship, with the way that we sort of play with some of the light liturgical elements, and we're not locked into any of them, but we found freedom in different sorts of worship styles. The bands this morning, and they've still got another piece to offer us today, have done a classic hymn, we listened to a spiritual, we've done a popular praise chorus from the 2010s, and two songs right from the cutting edge of worship that's being created right now, and we still have another one that's a popular song from the 70s that was sort of gained some new life during the Billy Graham Crusades when Johnny Cash started singing again. So, I mean, it's a fun place to be. It's not a boring kind of worship service. I'm thankful to be part of that. I'm thankful to everyone who participates in that worship part. Everything we do here is worship. If you're cleaning toilets, you're worshiping. But for those who do the music, I'm particularly grateful today. And there's always room on that team. If that's a place where you have gifting or curiosity, come talk to me, talk to Matthew Smith, one of these people you see on the stage, because there's always room. So, there you go. I just got really excited and I wanted to say all of that before I got going. So, good morning. I'm glad you're here. It's great to be up here with y'all. When Jim preaches, he has his little do a cup of water. Drink water. You gotta, hot coffee's a good way to clear the throat and get ready to talk about, right? No, but anyway, so for the about last 6 weeks, we've been doing like a vision series. We've been looking at what we've discerned God is calling us to be as a community. And that process happened a little under a decade ago, that this community sat down and prayed and studied and talked and discussed and navigated through the guidance of the Holy Spirit what kind of church this was going to be. And we've been looking at that mission statement sort of chunk by chunk. We did, so we are participating with God in creating a community of faith, hope, and love. And so we've taken time and broken down. What does it mean to participate? What does it mean to be a community? What is faith? What is hope? What does love mean as a church body? And so, today's sermon is kind of going to be an epilogue to that. Jim finished the big picture, and I'm going to do my best to land the plane a little. So, what does it look like for us to live into what we believe God has called us to do and be as a church and as individuals in a church? We all have a sense that there's a right way to be, that there's a path that we should be following. There are right and wrong choices that we can make in our lives about big things and about small things, about once in a lifetime special decisions. Where do I go to college? What am I going to study? Am I going to marry? There's big questions that we don't face that often, but there's also everyday, normal, mundane, boring stuff that we kind of feel a right and wrong path in as well. But often, as Paul points out in Romans 7, we can struggle to stay on the path that we have chosen, or been called to. That's the language I like. Sometimes, in spite of our best intentions, Paul's got this whole thing in Romans 7. I know what I should do, but I don't. I know what I shouldn't do, but I do that. And if you read the Greek, he's very broken. He's very frustrated and flustered, and he says, I'm confused. A lot of us find ourselves in that sort of space a lot. Often it can feel like there is an adversarial force working against us. For those of y'all in my Sunday school class, you know that I discovered this font this past week, and while it is very much, I like it. So we've got scary font today. So let's give me that next slide. Let's make it scary. Oh! I know, it's very dramatic. But if we're going to be dramatic, let's be dramatic. I'm so stupid. Stupid font. In the Bible, this force, this adversarial force, sometimes has a name. Think of the name Satan. Now, you may be familiar with the name, but Dan's going to be very happy with this. I already referenced some of the background stuff in the Hebrew. You may be familiar with the name, but I want to take a moment and get a closer look so that we can all sort of be on the same page before we go any further. So, today we're going to look at a couple passages from the New and Old Testament. Satan. We see in the New Testament, which of course is written in Greek, it is a transliteration from the Hebrew. Go ahead, yeah, that's slide. It's a transliteration from the Hebrew of the Old Testament. So they're using a Hebrew word, which is Hasatan, and they just sort of write it with Greek letters, so it writes it as Satanas, not to be confused with Santa Claus. Very dangerously similar. Don't want to get that one wrong. Who's coming down here? And it's important that when we see the word, that we understand what we are looking at. Because while Satan develops in its use to be a proper noun, a name, that's someone's name, and sort of into a specific religious character, supernatural being, that's not what most of the Bible is saying when it uses the word Satan. Which, by the way, only occurs about 20 times in the Old Testament, not a main character. The Hebrew Hasatan is not a name. Rather, it is a title, and it simply means adversary. Anyone or anything could be an adversary. In the book of Job, one of the angels in God's throne room in the court where God does his business has the job of being the Satan. It's sort of like being a lawyer. It's the prosecuting lawyer. In Numbers, there's a story where God sends an angel to thwart a wizard. I think the Bible's more fun than we give it credit for sometimes. God sends an angel to stop a wizard who rides a talking donkey. I mean, this is fun stuff. But God sends an angel to thwart Balaam, who plans to curse the Hebrews, and a Satan. In 1 Kings 11, when Hadad the Edomite becomes an enemy of Solomon, the text calls him a Satan. In today's lectionary text, Jesus will call one of his disciples Satan. And it can be very confusing if we don't have this sort of background in mind when we read it. Now, this word gives language to some of our experience of feeling like there are forces that want to draw us off course. We've experienced, give me that next slide, we've experienced the work of adversaries, and maybe even the adversary in our lives, something that seems to oppose, to resist, to interfere, to thwart you. Anything that's doing that in the Hebrew is a Satan. So when we think about vision for our church, for our families, for ourselves, I want to take a moment and look at a few passages that might show us a little about how the adversary tends to work in taking God's people off course. So, give me that first passage. It's 1 Chronicles chapter 21. Excellent. Very dramatic opening. If you're going to write something, you got to hook your reader right away. Satan rose up against Israel. That's a good first line that hooks someone's attention. Satan rose up against Israel and incited David to take a census of Israel. What? Is that Satan's master plan? Make them do math? Now, personally, that would actually require spiritual attack. But a census is a strange thing for the Satan to do, but it's going to make them do math. So David said to Joab, one of his leaders, and the commander of the from Beersheba to Dan, maybe it's all the people, then report back to me so that I may know how many there are. The king's word, however, overruled Joab. Joab was mad. He doesn't want to do that. So Joab left and went throughout Israel and came back to Jerusalem. Joab reported the number of fighting men to David. In all of Israel there were 1,100,000 men who could handle a sword, including 470,000 in Judah. But Joab did not include the tribes of Levi or Benjamin in the number, because the king's command was repulsive to him. This command, take a census, was also evil in the sight of God, so he punished Israel. What is going on here? That is a strange story. Satan has risen up against Israel, the people of God, and caused them to sin so boldly that God punishes them immediately for it by making them count the number of soldiers in their army. Come on, right? This is a totally reasonable thing for David to do. Any good general king, like David, who is seemingly engaged in constant warfare with his neighbors, would want to know, right? Should want to know how large of an army he could muster if he had to, right? But this simple, seemingly reasonable thing that David has been tempted to do by the adversary has violated who the people of Israel are supposed to be, who they have been called to be. They're supposed to be a people who show the world what God is like in the way that they conduct themselves in all aspects of life, even in the way they fight. It's supposed to be different. In their theology of warfare, God is the one who fights for them. God is the one who will win a battle. They simply show up. They just have to be willing to fight, and God will do the work, and they'll clean up. For the king to make an assessment of his own strength is to doubt God's ability to defend them. The adversary has succeeded in throwing their calling off course, not by leading David into some moral failing, which honestly isn't that hard with David, or by causing the people to worship foreign gods, once again, apparently not that difficult to do. Not through evil, violent, injustice, sex, money, corruption, none of that. But this mundane failure to remember their calling, to remember who they are and who they are meant to be. Let's try another one. Matthew chapter 4. Let's throw it up on the screen. You'll be familiar with this one. Then Jesus was led by the Spirit into the wilderness to be tempted by the devil. After fasting 40 days and 40 nights, he was hungry. Thank you, Bible. The tempter came to him and said, "If you are the Son of God, tell these stones to become bread." Jesus answered, "It is written, man shall not live by bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God." Again, right? Reasonable thing that Satan is tempting Jesus to do. Jesus is hungry. Why not feed himself? He has the capability. We know he has the power to do so, so why not? Why not A, meet his own needs, and B, prove in this moment who he is? Then, verse 5, the devil took him to the holy city, Jerusalem, and had him stand on the highest point of the temple. So the focal point of the capital of the people of God. "If you are the Son of God," he said, "throw yourself down, for it is written," if Jesus can use the Bible, so can Satan, "He will command his angels concerning you, and they will lift you up in their hands, so that you will not strike your foot against a stone." Jesus answered him, "It is also written, do not put the Lord your God to the test." This time it even looks like the devil is trying to help Jesus. He offers him a chance to do a miracle in Jerusalem. The religious leaders and temple worshippers would see him survive this great fall, caught by angels, a feat which, as Satan points out, could be seen as a fulfillment of Psalm 91. Verse 8, again the devil took him to a very high mountain and showed him all the kingdoms of the world in their splendor. All this I will give you, he said, if you simply bow down and worship me. Jesus said to him, away from me, Satan, for it is written, worship the Lord your God and serve him only. So there's the big one, right? Satan offers Jesus the whole world. Interesting that he can do so. Jesus could be king now, today. No wait, take over, change the rules, be a benevolent God king, no 2,000-year plus wait, no martyred followers and friends, no cross. It could all be his right now. But that's not the work that Jesus had been called to. It's not why he came to earth. It's not who Jesus is. Verse 11. Then the devil left him and the angels came and attended to him. Last one, the passage brought to us today that Christians around the world are reading. Mark 8. Jesus is the he there. Jesus then began to teach them that the Son of Man must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, the chief priests, and the teachers of the law, and he must be killed, and after 3 days rise again. He spoke plainly about this. And Peter took him aside and began to rebuke him. In the Matthew account, Peter shouts with this outburst, "Never, Lord! This shall never happen to you!" But when Jesus turned and looked at his disciples, he rebuked Peter. "Get behind me, Satan," he said. "You do not have in mind the concerns of God, but merely human concerns." Then he called the crowd around him with his disciples and said, "Whoever wants to be my disciple must deny themselves, take up their cross, and follow me." Okay, Jesus, take it easy. Chill, bro. I mean, Peter is impulsive and headstrong, maybe a bit annoying. But his intentions are good here, right? He loves Jesus. He loves him. He wants to protect him. Could there be anything more pure or noble than to protect your friend? To protect Jesus? But here, Peter has made himself adversarial to the mission of Christ. Peter has become a Hasatan, something trying to thwart God's plans in the world. I think this is how the adversary tends to work in our lives. Not in big, dramatic ways, not that those aren't an option. But the most common way I think that our lives, especially our spiritual lives, get derailed is by overloading us with good things that divert us from our calling and our purpose. What was the temptation of David? Be a good military leader. What was the temptation of Jesus? Be the king of the world. What was the temptation of Peter? Protect his friend. The temptations we see offered in these stories are all reasonable and good things. In the case of our church, we have articulated our sense of call as participating with God in creating a community of faith, hope, and love. We could give up on participating and move all of our attention to just the professionals on the stage, hire staff to do everything. We could give up on building a community and move our focus to building a platform, producing content, growing our audience. We could give up on faith and hope and focus exclusively on security and finances and stability. We could give up on love and focus on what is expedient and easy, and really only welcome people like us. That's sort of a dirty secret in the church growth world. Homogeneous churches grow fast and grow big. But to do any of things, and yes, I've clearly framed all of those as oppositional to our mission is bad, to prioritize fast growth, to focus on perfecting performance and professionalism, stability, reach and audience. These are qualities that many churches, qualities that they strive for because they feel that they've been called to do so, and maybe they have. But if we decided that we wanted to copy XYZ super church, we could do our best to do all the good stuff they're doing, and maybe we could even do some of it. Maybe some of it would even work, but that wouldn't be us. That wouldn't be who God has called this church to be. The same is true in our lives as individuals. Who do you want to be? What is your mission in the world? That is, what is God purposed for you to do and to be? What is your vision? How do you imagine your life playing out as you pursue your calling? What are your values? The qualities that matter to you, the non-negotiables in the way that you conduct yourself? Think about these things. If you're a note taker, I know some of you are, write it down and consider it later. Do you know the answer to these questions? What's your mission? What's your vision? What are your core values? If you do, that's awesome. Good. If you're not sure, decide that you're going to take some time and think about it. If you don't know where to start, get a hold of one of your pastors or a trusted friend in the community. We're here for you for this sort of work. I want to give you that picture. There we go. For Christmas, the Conrads gave Eliza a collection of baby dolls. There's like 6 of them, and they came in this little basket, and they're really cute and they're soft. Eliza loves them, but there's 6 of them, and she has about arms enough for 3 to 4. So throw me that next picture. This is how she usually played with these baby dolls right when she got them. I've never seen someone love a toy so much. We were tempted to hide them from her. She loved them so much, but if she saw them, she tried to scoop them all up. And she didn't have the capacity to hold all of them, so she's trying to move away. She'd cry and she'd go, and she'd be miserable. She'd get her favorite toy, she'd scream, babies, and scoop them all up, and then be miserable until we were able to distract her, or something moved her on to the next thing. But she couldn't hold them all at once, so she couldn't enjoy any of them. Now, give me that next slide. Just so our little illustration has a happy ending. She has learned how to play with them, but you'll notice she's learned how to play with them, not holding all of them at once. Right now, she's put them on night-night, and she's showing them how they're supposed to sleep. She's very nurturing to the baby dolls. But she's able to enjoy them now because she's not obsessed herself with holding everything at once. That's what a lot of us are like. Many of us are weighed down in our personal lives, in our family lives, in our spiritual lives, because we've allowed ourselves to be overloaded with more things than we can hold on to, and it draws us away from our mission, our vision, and our core values. Especially in this strange season of pandemic, with all of the time that we got back. People talk about all this free time we found, not commuting, not working in the office. I have not found extra time. I have found extra work. All this time we got back, we found new ways to fill our lives with all sorts of non-essential stuff. All of these little things that can choke the life out of us, that can drain us, that can bury us. And a lot of it good stuff. But you can drown in all of the good stuff. Marriages can be destroyed by a single massive act of infidelity or covenant-breaking action. But they more often die a death of 1,000 paper cuts. Families can be broken up by an abusive family member, but they more often drift apart just from a lack of trying or interest. Churches blow up in conflict and can collapse with a great enough moral failure from a prominent key leader. But most of the time they just settle into complacency and and drift off into entropy and irrelevance. Christians can abandon the church when their worldview is shattered by an external event that they can't reconcile with what they've always believed, but honestly, if a Christian is going to give up a Christian life, it's normally not because they lose faith, but because they lose interest. Here is an important truth for this moment. You can't stay still. The universal law of entropy applies to your faith just like it does everything else. You are always either growing or shrinking, maturing or regressing, gaining or losing. You cannot stay still. So here's the invitation, what I want you to do. We have spent over a month talking about mission, who we have been called to be and what we have been called to do as a community. So my invitation to you is to become an actor in that mission. What do I mean? I want you to be an actor, as in someone who is active, someone who acts, rather than a reactor, someone who's just sort of pushed along by what's happening around them. That means here at church, get involved. Take the next step, whatever that is. For some of us, that's the first step. For some of us, there's always more, and we've just sort of been stalling, waiting for the right moment. But no, take that next step into ministry. Pray. Ask God where you are called. Talk to your friends here. Talk to your pastors. What do we see in you? Where are you needed? Theologian Frederick Buechner defines vocation as the place where your deep gladness and the world's deep hunger meet. God has called the body of Towne View together in such a way where your giftedness meets the needs that this community has. Search that out. This is true in your personal life as well, and the life of your family. The pandemic has made many of us too passive. It's time to become an actor rather than a reactor. Stop leaving your faith development up to chance. Take responsibility for your relationship with Christ. Make time for study and prayer and community. There's a good likelihood that means laying down other things, even good things, in order to find the better thing. Stop leaving the faith development of your children up to someone else. Who is the most effective minister in your kid's life? For your teenagers, your elementary school child? Who is it? It's you, parents. I'm talking to myself, too. And not only is that biblical, but it's logical as well. I mean, just think about it. Jim and I are here like crazy for you guys. We want to do as much as we can. We want to respond as much as we can, but we are limited. I'll do whatever I can to put the gospel and biblical truths in front of your kids. But if your child comes to every Sunday school class, you never miss one, and we never take a week off, and every youth event, you never miss one, we never take a week off, every worship service on a Sunday, you never miss one, we never take a week off, and let's even throw in like a long weekend of serious Bible study, just for good measure. We're talking about maybe 200 hours a year. When you put that next to the amount of time you spend in the car with your kids, it's not even close. Become an actor. An active participant in your child's faith. An active participant in your family's faith. In your church and in your own walk with Christ. And don't hope that you'll do these things. Hope is often passive the way we use it. It can be a reactionary stance. Be an actor. What does that mean? Don't hope, decide. Don't hope, decide. Decide today that you're going to take an inventory, that you're going to weigh all the things that you have allowed to clutter your life, even the good things, because they can be that adversarial force in your life. Decide that you're going to make church essential. Decide that you're going to seek God's plan for your life. Decide that you're going to invest in your community the way that you always wished you would. Decide that you're going to invest in your family the way you know you should. Decide that you're going to ask for help. That you're going to seek out the next steps in your faith. Decide that you're going to be an active participant, even if that means giving something else up. Let's pray. God, you are the God of every good gift, and we are surrounded with your blessings and love. You've been overwhelmingly good to us. And you've given us this incredible gift of being a part of this gospel movement that you've put together. You've given us the gift of an invitation that you don't need us, but you want us. That you've given us important, valuable, fulfilling work to do in the world and in our church and our communities. I ask that you would give us the courage to look carefully at all of the things that we have filled our lives with and surrounded ourselves with. Give us the courage to ask you to reveal what is and isn't essential and what's keeping us, even good things, what is keeping us from you. Help us to see where the good has become a Satan, where the good has become adversarial in our lives, that we could lay those things down and step into a new way of being alive, a new way of connecting with ourselves, with our families, with our community, with our church, and with you. Love you, and we praise you. It's in Jesus' holy name we pray.